You're listening to the Empowering Process podcast with your host, Gail Kraft. Listen as she holds frank discussions around how your purpose, being present, and trusting your power impacts your life. Whether you're an entrepreneur, leader, or developing your vision, you'll find wisdom and insights you can utilize right now. Welcome your host, Gail Kraft.
Hey everybody, Gail Kraft here from the Empowering Process podcast, and I have with me my dear friend and fellow coachette, Lisa Adams. So Lisa is the founder of BIMA Network for Women and Lisa Adams Coaching. She is a recovered corporate workaholic, can totally relate, an entrepreneur, and most importantly, she's a wife to her pastor husband, Mike, for 22+ years and two amazing sons. Lisa works with professional women on developing and growing their faith and leadership abilities in the work that they have been gifted to do. She writes and teaches biblically based leadership lessons for Christian women in business or those leading other women in ministry. Lisa brings encouragement and inspiration to her audience and clients to live into their faith and their calling. And Lisa, tell us a little bit about what BIMA stands for.
Well, Gail, thank you so much for having me on. I love your podcast. You have some of the best guests, and I am so honored to be here with you today. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it, and just always love having great conversations with Gail. So she's so easy to talk to about anything and everything. But to answer your question about BIMA Network for Women was founded October 2020 with my colleague, Britt Palladino. And it's a long story, but BIMA itself is a Jewish word that is, and it also stands for the BIMA platform. There's a platform inside the Jewish temple. It's at the center of the temple, and it's where the word of God sits. And so there's a long story behind why we like BIMA, but we wanted to create a network for women based on the biblical foundations of the Word of God. So it's centered on the Word of God, thus BIMA, and also for women to have a voice, a platform, and a safe network of women to have community. So that's really where we started it. And it's been growing organically ever since, and it's exciting to see.
That's fantastic. And I'll tell you, what we're going to be talking about today is deserving, right? Of being deserving. And, you know, women in particular have struggles with self-esteem. Now, men, you do too. Please, this is not bashing men. We are not men. We love you, men. We love you. But we're going to talk from where we know. We're going to talk from our expertise, and we are women. And so we know what women's self-esteem is about. And quite frankly, I've dealt with a lot of men in my coaching, and you have a lot of the same issues too. So we're going to be talking about being deserving. And
so we're all human, right? So we all have the same struggles.
Right. So let's talk about those struggles and why we might feel that we're not deserving. What are some of the things that you run into and maybe that you have faced yourself?
I think with the deserving piece, I think what ends up happening, or what I've struggled with myself in the past, has been two big areas. I think having healthy boundaries. I've seen that a lot when you deserve things, but also dreaming, like getting out of that kind of rut, monotonous. If we're feeling down on ourselves, I think what ends up happening is we forget to really hit on those goals. We get afraid to set goals because we feel like we're going to fail. And we don't allow ourselves some time to be able to dream, think what could be, what could we do, what could be exciting, what are some new adventures we could try. Whether that's, launching a new business, a podcast, whatever that may be, but to be able to go and dream. And sometimes I think when we get stuck and we feel like we're undervaluing ourselves or others have undervalued us, that's where it stops. At least that's where it stopped for me. How about
What's
you?
interesting
Yeah.
is I had a client one time. He had this business that my business is getting me down, Gail. That's the first words out of it. So I said, well, we're not going to work on building a business plan around your business. Let's talk about that. And I asked him to share with me some of the dreams he has. And he had no dreams.
Yeah.
As a child, he was expected to go into his father's business, and there's a long story of how he moved. He comes from Ireland and he moved to the US, so not going into dad's business. But he had never dreamed as a child. He didn't play, cops and robbers and think of being, maybe a police officer or a fireman or because he knew where he's going to go. So he didn't know how to dream. Wow, we had a lot
that
of
lack
work.
of creativity or
Yeah.
that space.
Yeah.
Giving ourselves that space to just pause and think and change our mindset and be able to say, well, what could that be? What would that look like? What would be the impact if I did that trip, or if I did that new, business, or that new ministry, or if I launched to something? What could be the impact of that?
Right.
Who could I help? Who could I touch?
Yeah. And
it's crazy.
And to ask those questions, we were talking earlier, and I come from Massachusetts, the Boston area, and I decided to move to California. And I remember I gave a 9-month notice. I wanted to finish a project I was working on, and I didn't want them to plan on another project for me. I wanted them to know I was leaving and figure out the resources beforehand and not leave them high and dry.
Right.
And someone came up to me and they looked over my little cubicle and they're like, I hear you're going 3,000 miles across country. You're moving. And I'm like, uh-huh. And he's like, that's so brave. And I said, well, what's the worst that will happen? Will I have a roof over my head? I already have that figured out. Will I have clothes on my back? Bringing them with me.
Yeah, exactly.
Will I have food on the table? Hope to get a job.
Right.
So what's the worst that's going to happen?
Yeah. But it's, it's interesting. People go out of their comfort zone. Like, that's really uncomfortable. And I will say, having extended family from the Boston area and lived in Boston for a long time myself, that there's a lot of families that are born and raised and stay in Boston for generations. So it's just one of those cities where people don't move.
They don't move. Right. I mean, I grew up hearing that New Hampshire was so far away. I mean, that wasn't even an hour away. Oh my God,
like
you're going all the way to New Hampshire. Like, right. And so the confidence, this feeling of self-esteem, is something that, first of all, you have to realize and acknowledge that you're lacking it, or that you're uncomfortable, right? And then we talked about grace, giving yourself grace. Right.
So, I mean, part of, when we're talking about, am I worthy to be able to dream, right? Am I worthy to set down boundaries? Yes. And part of that is giving yourself grace, because our confidence can be in the crapper, right? And it hits a wall, and it happens to all of us. And so we have to give ourselves grace and recognize, like, okay, this is not a good day. Or I'm having a tough moment right now, and I'm going to give myself some grace, and we're going to move forward past this. And then I'm going to allow myself to do some cool things. Right. But yes, giving yourself grace, giving others grace, right. Understanding where others are coming from. That's a bit of that emotional intelligence that we like to pull in. But understanding where everyone is coming from. And it's still a crazy world right now. Like, having good one-on-one conversations, no matter where you land on any of these issues that are out there in our culture right now, are just great. They're worth having. I love having one-on-one conversations. I want people to be able to give me some grace. I give them some grace. We learn from each other, and we build a friendship, and it's good. right?
Oh, it's fantastic. And I think a lot of it has to do with giving yourself permission,
Yeah.
permission to experiment,
Yep.
permission to be human,
Definitely.
permission to fail,
Mm-hmm.
permission to have a dark side,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, I can tell you for me, one of my big self-esteem issues was I came from a very angry background and did not want to bring that into my life.
Mm-hmm.
But suppressing that actually brought it into my life because I suppressed it,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so when I learned that it's okay for you to be angry about that, Gail. What's not okay is how you express and resolve the anger,
It's how we respond, right? We
right?
don't want to react, which is that quick,
Mm-hmm.
knee-jerk reaction of anger and just, react, boom, right? We want to be calm and know how we want to respond. How do we want to show up when a trigger happens?
Right, right. And what's the outcome that we want? A lot of times in a conversation, I will stop someone and say, what is your intention here?
Great
Some
question.
people don't even know. And when they stop, might realize that their intention is to harm me,
Mm-hmm.
right? Their intention is I'm angry with you and I want to hurt you,
Mm-hmm.
right? And when they get to stop and recognize that, then the conversation changes,
Oh, it shifts. Huge
right?
shift.
Yeah,
It's asking those good questions of ourselves and of the people around us, right?
right.
So, that's a great question. What's your
Yeah,
intention here?
right.
Absolutely.
Right. What do you want?
Absolutely.
What do you want the outcome? So I took a guerrilla business school training. In fact, I even crewed that course. And one of the things that they teach you in guerrilla business school is when you're in negotiation, put your intentions up front,
Yep.
right? You sit down and say, hey, when we're done, we're going to have a signed contract. We're going to have an agreement. And I will tell you what my non-negotiables are right now.
Mm-hmm.
I will not blah, 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 blah. Everything else is up for grabs. Once you do that, you're in control of the conversation,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
And the conversation goes much better too.
Oh,
When everybody knows
absolutely.
what's happening, it's kind of nice, actually. It's refreshing
It's
to have somebody
very
be
refreshing.
that straightforward. Be
Yeah,
respectful, but straightforward. It's so
right.
refreshing.
Oh my
Mm.
goodness. Oh my goodness, right? And it causes no harm, and it sets an air of authenticity,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's something that you can do with yourself, right? What
Yeah.
so many of us take a while before we realize that the one person that you can never get away from and the one person that you really need to come to terms with is yourself.
Yeah. It's a
You
scary
know,
thing.
right?
Scary thing.
Right. So, so for me, when I finally realized that, Gail, you need to do a lot of digging. I've always done meditation and little self-exploration, but never got really, really deep. And like I said, I moved out to California, and the only job that I had out here was not the right place for me.
Yeah.
And I knew that day one,
Yeah.
but I didn't leave
How long did you stay for?
until they fired me.
Like, Gail, you're not getting it, so we're firing you.
Right, 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 right.
We would have
right.
preferred if you figured it out
It
yourself.
would have
But
been
because
better
you're
if
not,
you left on your own, but yeah, we're kicking your butt out the door.
how
And
many? Yeah, how many
I
people
got
do that? Oh
so
my goodness.
angry. I got
Mm.
so and then I really didn't like myself anymore. But what I did was I stopped and thought I was so successful in Massachusetts. I was on the board of directors of some big companies, right? I ran some major GE programs. Then I come out here and you fire my ass.
Mhm.
What's the common denominator? Me,
Yep. Us. Yep.
right?
Yeah.
And that's when I stopped
Yeah.
and looked in the mirror.
And that's hard to do. I mean, I'm a fast-paced person, right? Very active, very fast-paced. And that's how my early career was. I had logic to my career, started off in human resources and went into all kinds of different, HR systems, and just always had a plan, always was moving, but never stopped to really think about who is really Lisa and what is she about and what does she want to be about. It really took until I had a couple of kids and I was in my 40s before I learned to appreciate to slowing down and actually not being afraid to think. Because I think I was afraid to hear in my own head or to really face my own world.
Right.
And when I got past that, and as you know, I grew in my faith, truthfully, and that's really when I accepted the Lord and in my late 20s. But when I really paused and learned to appreciate that quiet or that pause or thinking, my life started to turn a whole different way. I didn't care about what other people thought about me, as long as I was respectful, as long as I was obedient to my Lord and respectful to others, giving grace. But as far as people's opinions of me, whatever.
Well, people are going to have their opinions, and I will tell you, you will be tested. And tested is not the right word. Let me reframe that. You run into situations where you might not handle them well.
Exactly.
You step back, you learn from the situations. Those types of situations don't stop because you learn from them. They continue to present themselves. One of two things happen. You failed in getting the lesson and you respond again, right? Until you get the lesson. Those situations will continue.
Yes.
You've learned the lesson and your reaction or your response is completely different. And you may not even realize that the situation happened. Right? But they continue to happen, right? It's when you become confident with yourself. And so recently for me, I've had many opinions actually showing up on Facebook about me, right? And the first time that happened, I was devastated. And a friend of mine goes, "Gail, you made the big time. People are jealous of you, big time.
When they start slamming on you, it's a good thing."
Right. People are throwing daggers at you.
And you're doing good. You're doing good work.
Right. And so now, I still have that stab in the heart feeling because, we all want to be loved by everybody. But when I feel that, I stop and I look at the source.
Yeah.
And I think, how much pain must you be in to lash out at me who you don't even know?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And then I feel sorry for the pain that they must be in.
Yeah.
Right.
Spot on. And I think, one other point that just kind of came to mind, Gail, as we were talking about all this is, women and men, we all have to remember that we're given gifts and talents that we're meant to use and that only we can use. Right. So let's focus in. Like, I was in a group last night and I said, "Hey, I'm leading this part of the group because this is where my skills are at. I'm going to be a project manager for this particular thing." And I said, "I want all of you to be focusing on where are your skills. What do you want to bring to the table on this? Because each of us have our own skills and talents. You got to know what those are and bring them to the table and focus on them.
Right.
And then bring the other folks that don't have your skills and talents." My colleague with BIMA Network, Britt, is a visionary. She's very fast paced. She's got a million ideas all the time. I'm the person behind the scenes. That's more like the integrator. And we work really well together, and that's amazing. But we bring our different gifts and talents together to make everything work. So to remind people that
allow each other to exercise your gift. So she's not trying to be the integrator and you're not trying to be the innovator.
Yeah.
Right. And that's how you grow. Honestly, my success in business has always been, first of all, I've always had great HR. I had great HR to turn to and they'll, "What do I do with this?" Right before I cause a mess. And I always focused on my staff's strengths.
Yes.
not their weaknesses. If you
Mhm.
have a weakness in this area, we're going to hire this person who will fill that weakness because that's their strength. And, no matter where I worked, I had the team, even the company that fired me had the team that everyone else wanted.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah. And
and
I
it,
mean, go ahead.
no, it wasn't anything special. I even had the rejects, right? That no one else wanted to hire. I'm like, well, I'll take them.
Well, it's that focus of strengths, but also understanding, yeah, we do have weaknesses, as you were bringing up earlier. It's learning. It's constantly being open to being teachable and learning, because we're
Right.
not going to be perfect. We can't have a job or can't have everything that we work on in our world be just on our strengths. We will be working in something that we don't necessarily like. There'll be some times where, oh gosh, this is not a strength of mine, but I'm going to work through it and I'm going to
Right.
learn from it, because it's a task that has to get done and somebody has to do it. And so I have to do it.
Right. And we're going to get it out of the way.
And we're going to do it, and we're going to, we're
I
just going to move through it.
front load it, get it done.
Right. Exactly. But to stay teachable.
Mhm.
Is it Maxwell? I can't remember who says it, but if you're going to fail forward.
Right.
And that's what I love to teach my boys, my teenage boys, is you're going to fail. You're going to screw up. It's okay. Give yourself grace. Right. And continue to dream, continue to move forward, and just learn from your mistakes. Just learn from it. Experiment. Right. Keep experimenting, keep moving, and your life will be so rich. So rich.
And people will still love you. I think for me, at least, my suppression and my lack of self-esteem had been based around, well, if I don't show up the perfect good girl, you won't love me. If I don't shut up and not voice my opinion, you won't love me. You're killing me. What you're doing is hurting me, but I can't let you know that, or you won't love me. Right? I'm in a bad situation and I need help. But if I let you know I can't handle it, you won't love me.
See, and those are all lies.
I know.
All lies.
All lies. But you don't know that, right? Until you finally fess up. Until you finally fess up. And that's the scariest thing, and I'll give you a real life situation. So my first marriage was one of those where, very emotionally, mentally, spiritually abusive, on so many levels. And he was cheating on me, and no one knew. And I belonged to a group, meditation group, motivational group. And I showed up one time, and they're like, well, where is he? And I'm like, with his girlfriend. I just blurted it out.
Yep.
And they're like, what? And they grabbed me, right? And what's going on? And I blurred out what was happening. And they're like, have you told your family? I'm like, no. Because how bad of a wife am I that my husband's running around?
Wrong. That's a lie.
I know, wrong answer, right?
That's his responsibility. Like he has to take, like each of us have to take responsibility for our part, right? In it, but we have to take personal responsibility. We can't control the other person. We can only be in charge of what we do.
Right. And that was the hardest thing, was they sat me down and handed me a phone, and they wouldn't leave the room until I called my family.
Yep. Good friends.
It was rough. It was rough. But that's when I started questioning motivations. Right? Why do I believe this to be true? Right? And it was, shortly after that I left. I left a relationship with a 1.5-year-old, but I left.
Yep.
Right.
Have to do what you got to do.
And I guess what I survived. I not only survived, I thrived. That's when I became a manager at a very prestigious firm, making a shitload of money.
And enjoyed every minute of it.
Oh my God. I bought a house, bought a new car. I mean, vacations. Yeah. Which would never happen if I stayed in that awful situation. Who knew? You don't know.
Right. But what you're bringing back, Gail, is really that story of you were worthy. You were more worthy than what your previous life and your previous husband had told you you were.
Right.
And so you believed those lies. And truthfully, I believe those are lies straight from hell.
Right.
And you believe them. And a lot of women do.
Right.
You're not the only one.
I know.
A lot of us have our own little soundtracks that we tell ourselves that are not good. And we need to shift those to be, really what does the Lord tell us? Who are we? Right. We are, as a follower of the Lord, one of my favorite scriptures is 1 Peter, if you don't mind me saying this, 2:8 is, or 2:9, but you are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's special possession, that you may declare the praises of him who called you out of darkness into his wonderful light. We are princesses and princes of the King. We are his children. And so that's what we have to remember, is who made us, who called us, who's gifted us, who gave us talents, and to forget the lies. From the
and then
side.
Gave us free will to forge our own path.
Absolutely.
With the tools, whether we use them or not.
Exactly.
Right. And it's the free will. So when we talk about being deserving and being worthy, this journey, I know that I went on, I didn't do it alone. Right. There's no way I could have grown as much as I've grown without the guidance and the help of people that I was able to turn to, whether they were counselors or coaches or, motivational speakers. I was very involved in that world. That's a whole other story.
Yeah, I was going to say, we'll talk another time on that one.
Oh my God, I could tell you stories.
Love it.
Yes, but that's the thing, is don't try to do stuff on your own.
No,
right?
No, we're not meant to be by ourselves like that.
We're not. We're a community. And that's a whole other thing that we're going to be talking about some other time. We need tribe. We need each other. And you need, I hate using that word because I don't like to be demanding, but you do need to find yourself, your center, your values, your own personal values, because you deserve to grow. We all deserve to shine. We all deserve to express the very best of who we are and what we bring to this earth. We're all looking for love. I don't care who you are. We're all looking for love, and it's there to be had.
Yeah. And the world needs what you're bringing, right?
That's right.
So men and women out there, the world needs what you're bringing.
Right. So bring it on.
Bring it. Yeah, bring it. We need it.
And we'll cheer you on. We'll help you get rid of roadblocks. Right. We'll help talk through the concerns. Whatever. We're there. So Lisa, how can people get in touch with you if they want to know more about your coaching or BIMA?
Oh, great question. So BIMA.network is our BIMA website. And also I have lisaadamscoaching.com. You can reach me there. You can find me on LinkedIn as Lisa Adams. I am there a lot. And we also have a BIMA Facebook page as well. So BIMA Network for Women. And we'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear questions, comments, thoughts, anything. Yeah.
Oh, yep. And I love talking with you. So everybody, thank you so much for listening. This is Gail Kraft from the Empowering Process podcast. And if something came up that you have a question, do note it. We'll get back together again and answer your question. If this resonates with you, let us know. And if you know someone who could benefit from this, please share it with them. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Gail.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Empowering Process podcast. Be sure to visit Gail at gailkraft.com to learn more about how she serves thought leaders, entrepreneurs, and goal seekers. And remember, if you like this broadcast, be sure to share and subscribe so you don't miss an episode.